My name's Sarah Brady, and I'm a storyteller, teaching artist, and writer. And like so many of you, I experienced my life being drastically changed in March 2020. My family and I were living in the United Kingdom at the time, and we were scheduled to move back to the United States in June 2020. So I was in the midst of a variety of culminating projects. I was supposed to be performing at a variety of schools in Cambridge in conjunction with the Museum of Cambridge. I was supposed to be going to Oxford University to present an academic paper at the White Rose Symposium. I was supposed to be finishing a variety of projects with the Suffolk Archives, including one that focused on 800 years of history at a particular church with magnificent, very important medieval wall paintings. And I was trying to make sure that I had a smooth transition from my work back to the United States. So I was supposed to be flying back to the US for a trial run with a particular company that I was hoping to be working with on an intermittent basis for the foreseeable future. And then all of that stopped. Not only did it stop, but we went into lockdown. And in the United Kingdom, lockdown meant not only that schools were closed and restaurants were closed, but we basically could only leave our own homes for a few reasons. We were allowed to leave our houses for an hour a day to exercise, but it had to be in a close radius to our homes. We were allowed to leave our homes to get food or medicine or medical attention, and we were allowed to leave our homes if our jobs were considered essential. Well, my husband was an essential worker, and so his work continued unabated, while my daughters and I tried to figure out how we were supposed to do school and work from home without really having any time to prepare spaces or technology. We had places where they had done their homework, but those places didn't really work if one child was trying to listen to a lesson while the other child was also trying to listen to a lesson, and they both needed to use the outlet at the same time to make sure that their devices weren't dying in the middle of a lesson. And my office was quite small. It was sufficient. It was sufficient for all of the research and the administrative work and even rehearsals that I had done. But there was no room to make this office a studio. And so I was trying to figure out how I was going to be able to potentially keep working. I discovered that I could position a chair in the corner just so. And if I took down the pictures on the wall and very carefully placed a stack of books in front of me, I could balance my computer and manage to do Zoom meetings and Zoom storytelling if I was sitting down. But as a storyteller, I very rarely sit down. My background is theater, and most of the time when I'm performing in person, I am using much of the stage. I might even be going down off the stage to do part of the performance. I might even be moving amongst the audience. And now I was trying to figure out how to adapt my stories to a very small space. Meanwhile, the companies and the organizations I was working with, they were trying to figure how we might be able to move forward with at least some of our projects. And the conclusion we came to with the amount of space and technology that I had was I could do audio recordings. I managed to get some items for recording audio stories, audio-only stories. And that's the way I delivered the remainder of my work for a couple of those organizations. And then we found out we weren't moving on time. We weren't going to be moving in June. It would be July. And then we found out it wasn't going to be July. It was going to be October. And then we were told it wasn't October after all. It was actually August, and we need to hurry. And so we began frantically to look for a place to live, but we needed to rent it while we were still living, or at least reserve it, not rent it, while we were still living in the United Kingdom. So we were looking for places sight unseen. And so we discussed what was important for our family during this season, if possible. And one of the top needs was to find a place where each person could have at least a small space to do their schoolwork or do their work without being in each other's way. And thankfully, we were able to find a place where that's possible. I have an office/studio. It's not huge, but it's sufficient. And as I started unpacking, once our household goods arrived, because those didn't arrive till September, and we got unpacked by about the beginning of October. And then I started trying to figure out how I was going to do various performances. At first, I was still sitting. I was sitting in front of a bookshelf because I felt like that was at least neutral, with a quilt on the wall. And that was my first backdrop. But as I was looking toward doing more work, I realized that I couldn't make all of my programming, all of my storytelling work in that way. I needed a space where I could stand up and move around. So I worked to get some lights. I knew I needed lights, at least for the fact that we didn't have many lamps even that worked here, because most of the lamps we had in the UK, well, they worked in the UK, not with US electrical systems. So I needed new lamps. So I made it a priority to get some lighting for my studio space. And I knew I was going to need a backdrop. And so I found the most inexpensive but sturdy frame that I could find, and a very simple backdrop. But as I was starting to try to experiment with that backdrop, I realized that I still had to have the computer very close in order to be able not to have sightline issues. And that wasn't going to permit me to move. And so I decided that I was going to ask for some help. I contacted another storyteller named Megan Wells, who I heard was doing work with helping people develop their Zoom rooms. And she was working from a 9-space idea. Just like you work on stage, you have center stage, you have downstage, you have upstage, you have left, you have left in the middle, you have in the center, you have all of those areas. Well, she was working from that principle too and helping people develop their Zoom rooms. And so I talked to her. And I told her I had a small space, about 4 feet by 6 feet, and I really needed to be able to work within this space. And so we also talked about the fact that I needed not to spend a lot of money on this. And so we started talking through what I had in my home that could help to create this space. The first thing we stumbled upon was the fact that I had black boxes. I had worked for years using black boxes as an entirety of my set wherever I went. And so I went down to my basement and got this that is actually a black box, and I put it in this spot, and we decided that was a good placement. And then we decided I needed something tall here in the middle. And we were thinking through what that could be, and I realized I had an extra ironing board. In the UK, we had had lots of people staying with us a variety of times, and so I'd had an extra ironing board in the spare room in the guest room for people to stay and to be able to use, but we weren't having a lot of people come stay with us, and so I could safely use the ironing board here. But I needed something to put it on top of, and so I found a filing cabinet that I moved to this placement, put the ironing board on top, but I also needed to secure the ironing board. So I found some belts that I don't use very often, and I put them all together, and I secured the ironing board to this filing cabinet that I am still able to use whenever I need the files from there. And so we now had 2 places, but we needed 1 more. And so I got a small step stool that I placed near the camera so that I could move in close and then easily move away. So now we had several different levels, as well as just standing or crouching down at a variety of places. But Nobody really wants to see an ironing board and a plain black box. We needed to provide some stage dressing. And so we looked around. What did I have in my house? And so we started talking about sheets and curtains and blankets. My sheets were all either bright white or had interesting patterns on them, like Christmas patterns or other holiday patterns. And so I decided that was not a good plan. Curtains, if I had any curtains, they were hanging up. That was not going to be workable. But blankets was a good option. They were a good option. And so I went and I found first this blanket that I was using in my living room, and I brought it down here. And I realized that I had a sightline issue here. And so I found this other blanket that my husband had taken with him to college. His mother had crocheted it for him, and we had it sitting waiting to be used in a closet. And so I put it here, securing it with a clamp and with a pile of books on top of a very nearby bookshelf. I'm still able to use the bookshelf. And so then I took care of my sightline problem using what I'd already found. And we decided eventually that I needed a similar blanket here. I didn't have another one, so I was going to need to spend a little bit of money. I managed to get this blanket for $15, and it covers my ironing board and makes this a usable space with dimension. And then we talked through a variety of ways I could use each parts of this space. So here I have something that can look like a table. It can give an indication as to what sort of programming I'm doing. This neutral set of books I often use here with very neutral bookends. Sometimes I'll use a globe. Sometimes I'll use flowers. Just a variety of things that give an idea here. Sometimes I'll have a basket here with whatever items I'm going to use with stories. Or if I'm doing a character presentation, I'll have items that will provide the business for the character. I can also lean here in a variety of ways depending on the story that I'm telling. So that area is very able to be used. Here, I am able to do a variety of things with this area too. I can almost lean. Can't really lean too hard or else the ironing board will fall off, but I can almost lean. I can peek out. I can hide. If necessary, depending on the story, I can completely disappear. Sometimes, especially with certain storytelling, especially if I'm doing tandem storytelling, I might actually just walk off for a period of time while the other teller is telling a bit more of story, and then I walk back on whenever it's time for me to share the next section that I'm supposed to share. With this seat nearby, the camera, I'm able to come in close. I'm able to play with characters. I'm able to sometimes have a discussion with the audience, especially whenever I've finished a program and we're talking about the stories or the subject matter that has been discussed. So I have all of this that I'm able to experiment with while also standing back in this area, extending my arms almost to where you can see all of my hands, not quite, but almost. I'm able to do a lot here. Also, if something's very important, I can pull it back here so you can see more of me. I'm able to do some things with layers along here. I'm able to use the entirety of this very small space. And sometimes, whenever I'm doing certain programming, like programming that is entirely fairy tales, for example, I'll add in some fairy lights up here, again, things that I just have around my house. So I'm able to do a lot with this space. And I can take it down and put it back up very quickly. Recently, I had to do some recording in another location. I needed to use a variety of my own items, and so I was able to take down the backdrop, take with me the blankets and the books and the black box, take with me this blanket, and reconstruct this sort of a set in another location, and then bring it all back. And I was a little nervous, thinking, how long is it going to take to put this back up? And it actually took only about 15 minutes. So it's very doable, even whenever you are doing things entirely by yourself. So I hope you find this bit of information helpful, like I have found it helpful. And if there's anything I can help you with, I hope you'll reach out. Thanks so much and have a great day.